Hello. Just a few moments ago, I finished recording an interview with a volunteer from International Solidarity Movement who is currently in the West Bank. And I think it is important to hear his views, especially in terms of how the Palestinians are currently facing the occupation and the attempts at their annihilation by the Israeli armed forces and by the settler movement. So here we go with this interview. The volunteer's code name is Calico, and that's what we'll be using. Thank you so much for joining me. So thank you so much for joining me here today. I think it's really crucial for you to share your experiences and thoughts. So I have a set of questions that I would like to ask of you, and so that more and more people can learn what's happening on ground in the West Bank, especially, and maybe, empathize more with the Palestinian cause. So, thank you for joining me. So, my first question is, what motivated you to join International Solidarity Movement? What were your personal motivations? What did you hope to accomplish through it?
That's an excellent question. There's been a variety of different things that have motivated me personally with respect to volunteering with ISM. Mainly what's transpired since October 7th with respect to the genocide that's being perpetrated against the Palestinian people in Gaza, as well as more recent escalations in settler colonial violence, as well as ethnic cleansing that's taking place across the West Bank. And after October 7th, watching in particular the student movements as well as encampments around the world with respect to the principled as well as courageous decisions that they took to take a stand against genocide, as well as take risks, as well as assert solidarity in the face of complicit institutions with respect to the genocide that Palestinians are being subjected to. I work at a university, and I was seeing this unfold across North America as well as in Western Europe in particular. So in particular, students principled as well as courageous stands was one source of motivation for me with respect to my decision to do something beyond writing critically about what was taking place in Palestine. And in particular, too, looking at a variety of different social movements. So what does it look like to take a stand, to show solidarity, as well as show up for Palestine? And I started looking into a variety of different organizations. ISM has a long-standing track record of being Palestinian-led, of engaging in consensus-based decision-making, of being anti-oppressionist, as well as engaging in nonviolent direct action. And I will qualify that nonviolence in ISM is a tactic with respect to engaging in protective presence, taking direct action alongside Palestinians. So in particular, seeing the sacrifices as well as the convictions of students globally with respect to what Palestinians were being subjected to was the key source of motivation. And then also following the news, I had signed up for an initial training online with ISM around the time that a young activist named Ashinar Egi was murdered by the Israeli occupation forces after a protest in Beta in the West Bank. And so I was confronted with the realization that I was seeing young people all across university campuses, as well as young activists like Ashinar, make sacrifices, take risks, as well as offer a compassionate as well as principled response to genocide being inflicted upon Palestinians. And so I reached out to ISM and went through a training and ultimately that factored into my decision to try to make it into occupied Palestinian territories, as well as go to the West Bank to accompany and engage in protective presence alongside Palestinian families.
Well, thank you so much. So, when you first arrived there in the occupied territories, can you share your first impression of your experience there? I mean, here you are a university professor, you're in an occupied territory. What did you see or experience like initially?
Yeah, I mean, from the jump, once you cross into the border of the West Bank, once you make it into Palestine, um, I've been reading about Palestinian struggle for liberation as well as self-determination for decades now. Have been exposed to a variety of different struggles for self-determination from indigenous people globally. I was born and raised in ancestral Osage territory in what is now oftentimes referred to as Kansas. I saw indigenous communities resisting pipelines in the Okanagan Valley, as well as what is now referred to as British Columbia. I've spent time in Chiapas, Mexico, amongst Zapatistas with respect to their struggle for a world where many worlds fit, as well as their construction of autonomy. And I initially was exposed to international solidarity through the Zapatistas several decades ago, just when the Zapatistas announced themselves to the world. Now, when I arrived in Palestine, what struck me, even though I had read about it and known about it for decades, was just how oppressive as well as ubiquitous the racialized apartheid regime of the Israeli state was imposing itself upon Palestinians as well as Palestine. And that ranges from militarized border police to settlers as well as soldiers. We were encountering basis, vitriolic, zealous settler militia members who were harassing and terrorizing Palestinians. We watched as both settlers and soldiers meted out physical violence as well as psychological terror and trauma against Palestinian communities in the rural countryside. And the degree to which the geography of Palestine is being carved up, is being enclosed, as well as is being dispossessed from Palestinians through state-sanctioned mechanisms, including Israeli law, but also that is bankrolled by a variety of different Western allies and actors, namely the United States government. And so on a day-to-day basis, you are witnessing the imposition of imperialist aspirations with respect to the United States, as well as even the United Kingdom and its support for the Zionist regime. But even looking at what is taking place in the everyday realities for Palestinians, the racist apartheid walls, the checkpoints, the degree to which they are met with contempt and disdain, and the degree to which they are dehumanized in rhetoric as well as in practice by settlers, by soldiers, as well as the broader structure of colonial occupation that the Zionist regime is imposing upon the entire geography. And so that is taking place at once physically, in which the territory of the West Bank is being carved up, as well as enclosed, encroached upon illegally now for generations. And we also are very well aware at this point of the genocide as well as annihilation that is taking place in Gaza. So there's a particular logic of elimination as well as an impetus to destroy and replace the indigenous population of Palestinians across the occupied West Bank. And that is emerging in physical forms, but also in psychological terror, in which settlers are encroaching upon Palestinian families. There are, in many respects, what I would frame as lynch mobs that are attacking Palestinian families in the middle of the night with pepper spray, with chains, with knives. There are settlers who are carrying assault rifles as well as shooting Palestinians indiscriminately. and getting away literally with murder and acting with impunity. So whether it's physical violence, assassination, murder, and terror, or whether it's psychological trauma, as well as creating a culture, as well as atmosphere of fear, terror, intimidation, as well as collective punishment, all of those things are unfolding across. Of course, we know that is happening in Gaza with respect to the annihilation of the Gaza Strip, but also across the West Bank now. It's only escalating, and the degree of violence that is both physical as well as psychological is intensifying on a day-to-day basis. And just for context, I signed up and joined ISM in April. I was there for a month earlier this year, as well as then just returned after another month of frontline protective presence service in the month of August, and witnessed a variety of different forms of terror, as well as destruction, ranging from home demolitions to Palestinian shepherds being shot, to lynch mobs storming and raiding Palestinian families in the middle of the night and putting chains around the neck of one son in particular. There was a now notorious incident more recently in which a Palestinian activist was shot by a settler who has been internationally sanctioned, as well as there are no shortage of degree of raids, arsons, attacks, assaults, intimidation, as well as even encroachments onto Palestinian territories in which Palestinian livelihood strategies are being foreclosed. Sheep and goat herds are being slaughtered en masse, if not stolen, sometimes by the settlers. So there's a variety of different ways in which the Zionist settler colonial project is dispossessing Palestinian lands, but also foreclosing and trying to eliminate Palestinian culture, Palestinian heritage, as well as Palestinian land relations and the connections that they have to territory.
So as a volunteer, I mean, you just gave us a general overview of the daily indignities that the Palestinians have to suffer, both emotional and physical. As a volunteer, what kind of emotional and physical violence you have experienced or you have seen other volunteers experience or threatened with? If you could share some of that information with us.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to. One recent incident in particular, which just happened a few weeks ago, was in the rural village of Ibzik in the northern Jordan Valley. And the rural Palestinian community there has been targeted for dispossession as well as harassed for months on end, not to mention even longer historically. And recently, what took place is a settler militia that we later found out is actually sanctioned by the Israeli government and in many ways effectively deputized by the IOF, were patrolling as well as canvassing the community. So they spent over an hour surveilling, monitoring, driving armored vehicles around the community. They drove to a community school. We weren't for sure what was taking place. The family suspected there was vandalism going on. They later went down near some water lines, and it's a quite common tactic of the occupation to sever water lines, in particular in a semi-arid to arid region, because that is a way to sever the conditions of life of Palestinians that are living across the West Bank. And then the settlers, as well as the soldiers who were driving the armored vehicles, ended up blocking a road that was an entrance into the village. What transpired later is that a group of 8 to 12 soldiers carrying assault rifles that had laser targeting systems on them drove up to a Palestinian family and began threatening them with arson, with death threats, as well as that they were going to steal their sheep and that they would come back in a couple of days to burn the village. Myself and another ISM volunteer then, in a de-escalatory manner, with our hands up, approached the soldiers We responded also by video recording them, as well as questioning by what legal authority were they in Palestinian territory. We informed them that they were guilty of advancing an illegal occupation, and that they should leave the place as well as geography immediately. They responded by grabbing my colleague and comrade, dragging him to the ground, and beating him. When they saw me recording, they also trained their laser targeting systems on me, began issuing directives that I should obey and comply, or that I would be shot. And then had me drop down to my knees. They later kicked me to the ground, had me on my stomach, wrenched my arm around my back, stole my phone, and then issued some sucker punch, cheap shots, elbows to the back of the head, as they were also beating my colleague. Now, in saying this, whilst ISM volunteers are sometimes subjected to violence, it is by no means comparable or comparable in the least to what Palestinians are facing on a day-to-day basis. Whilst ISM volunteers may be detained, may be arrested, may be beaten to some degree, as well as deported, on a day-to-day basis, Palestinians are being indiscriminately tossed into administrative detention, tortured in cruel and inhumane ways in Israeli prisons. There are over 10,000 Palestinians that are being held hostage across Israeli prisons. And on a day-to-day basis, if you look at what's taking place in Gaza, as well as the occupied West Bank, whilst international volunteers may be detained, arrested, or even subjected to violence, Palestinians are being murdered, killed, assassinated, as well as subjected to terror to an untold degree, and subjected also to violence that is by an order of magnitude far greater than what international volunteers are. And so in this incident, we ended up being relatively okay. After the soldiers assaulted as well as robbed us, we were taken care of by the Red Crescent, who brought us to a local hospital. The Palestinian families then took care of us, fed us, tended to our wounds, made sure we were okay. But that was one small indication of the cost and consequences of international solidarity, but more broadly is an indicator of just how persistent as well as ceaseless the violence that Palestinians are being subjected to is happening on a day-to-day, night-to-night basis. And whilst we were recovering from the beating as well as assault on the ground, the soldiers then drove by the Palestinian family, as well as, rather than saying simply that they would burn the village, the soldiers issued a threat saying that they would come back to burn the Palestinians alive. And that's a direct quote that the Palestinian families documented and heard amongst themselves. As well as now that community IBSIC continues to face harassment, as well as is nearly being forcibly evicted. And this is coinciding with settler incursions into a variety of different Palestinian villages that were taking place on a day-to-day basis. Shortly after I recovered, as well as the other ISM volunteers, changed locations. There was a home demolition in the Jordan Valley. There was also a lynch mob that attacked a family in the middle of the night with pepper spray, knives, and chains. And as much as ISM volunteers are there to engage in protective presence as well as at risk, it is once again also quite revelatory about the realities that Palestinians face on a day-to-day basis with respect to psychological terror, compounding traumas, as well as a systemic, as well as highly orchestrated program of ethnic cleansing, as well as systemic attack on their livelihood strategies, their land relations, as well as the degree to which the West Bank is being carved up, as well as targeted for dispossession and the annihilation
Well,
that exists on it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal testimony, but also what's happening to the larger Palestinian population in the occupied territories in West. In your previous that you were talking about, you had mentioned protective presence. Could you elaborate a little bit? What does it mean within the context of West Bank and occupation?
Okay, yes. So with ISM, one of the main forms of direct action and international solidarity that we engage in is referred to as protective presence. And in many ways, or in other literatures, as well as other practices, oftentimes that's also known as accompaniment. And so what that looks like in practice is literally showing up, taking a side, as well as standing alongside Palestinian families that are with respect to dispossession, with respect to death threats, as well as arson and raids on their families. And so across the occupied West Bank, ISM works in a variety of different locations, ranging from Masafriyata in the south, in the southern Hebron Hills, to the northern Jordan Valley, to also more urban centers, including Al Khalil or Hebron. There's also a community that they're supporting there that is a hotspot for settler violence, as well as is constantly under attack. So protective presence means showing up, getting to know and building relationship and a sense of community and rapport with Palestinian families that are being targeted for displacement, demolition, as well as dispossession. And in many instances, that means staying up late during a night watch so that Palestinians can get a better night's sleep. It also means going out shepherding with Palestinian pastoralists, assisting them with their livelihood strategies, as well as then even to building relationships, playing games with children, laughing, having a good time together, building a sense of community, rapport, as well as offering solidarity on a day-to-day basis, looking each other in the eyes, learning a bit of Arabic, having conversations, as well as just coping with the day-to-day realities of a structure of harm that is settler colonialism, as well as in many instances as well, Palestinians during their day-to-day activities through checkpoints as they're shepherding, as they're going about day-to-day life. And I will say, as much as ISM is doing what I think is incredible work to offering international solidarity through protective presence, I do want to make it clear, as well as explicitly state, that the eventual liberation of Palestine will be owed not to international solidarity, but to the political agency, as well as creative and militant forms of resistance that Palestinian people are exercising on a day-to-day basis. And so it will be the steadfastness, or the samud, as well as resolve and resist Palestinians themselves, that will eventually secure collective liberation and a self-determined future for Palestine. In many instances, I think it is beneficial to have international solidarity through the form of protective presence, assist in that broader project of self-determination along the way. But ultimately, if we think about who are the authors of Palestinian liberation, who will deserve the credit for self-determination from below, from the Palestinian people, it will be Palestinians themselves.
That's really great. And could you okay, so you were there, you are there, and against this onslaught of a powerful Zionist state supported by United States and most of the West, um, how do the Palestinians, emotionally survive but resist, against this implacable power? Like, I'm not saying physically resisting, but how do they maintain, a positive attitude? And what have you seen, something that you admire that you could share with us?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And in many ways, in looking at what the Palestinians are up against in terms of a colonial structure of harm, as well as grinding generational forms of racist dehumanization, that are being sanctioned by the Israeli state and international actors such as the United Kingdom as well as the United States be active participants in the attempted annihilation of Palestinians. I'm not quite for sure how they are as resilient as they are. I have since learned, after having been on the ground in Palestine, of the Palestinian notion of samud, or steadfastness. I've seen a variety of different manifestations, expressions of samud throughout my time there, with respect to the way that they're engaging in mutual aid, with respect to the way that they are advancing futures in the face of a grinding racist apartheid regime, as well as persistent forms of psychological as well as physical terror. But in many ways, I think that is owed to their ancestral relations that they have with territory. I recall at one point hearing the Zapatistas say that a people with memory is a rebellious people. I think Palestinians in this current generation, as well as generations to come, have a keen sense of the sacrifices as well as struggles of their ancestors. And they have ancestral memories that are rooted in territory as well as deep connections to the land. They are exercising and practicing and breathing life into those land relations as well as their kinship relations on a day basis, through their livelihood strategies, through the ways that they take care of each other, through the ways in which they sing songs, speak their language, hold on to their culture as well as their heritage, as well as then to find joy, reasons to laugh, as well as moments of happiness throughout each day. So the degree to which the Palestinian notion of samud is engendered on a day-to-day basis by Palestinians is spellbinding to me, as well as deeply inspiring and motivating. And I think that is the life force or the lifeblood of what is enabling them to survive what is now an intergenerational onslaught, as you have said, against their existence in terms of the degree to which empire as well as the settler colonial project and the Zionist movement is trying to eliminate them. In addition to Palestinian steadfastness, they are resisting in a variety of different ways. They're engaging in education from below, practicing agroecology. They have sustainable as well as just ways of sharing amongst themselves, of taking care of each other. I will say that I think that the rest of the world has a great deal to learn from Palestinians with respect to generosity, with respect to hospitality, as well as what it means just to treat each other in a decent and dignified manner. Having said that, I also don't want to fall into the trap of creating perfect victims. There's been a lot of writing as well as critical conversations about the degree to which we shouldn't overly romanticize any oppressed group. Oppressed people are fallible. They make mistakes. They're imperfect. But an imperfect, fallible people is by no means deserving of being slaughtered as well as dispossessed of their territory. Having said that, I will circle back to the point I made just a minute ago, as well as highlight something that I noticed on a day-to-day basis when it comes to generosity, when it comes to engendering and offering each other dignity, as well as recognizing and offering mutual respect to each other. The rest of the world has a great deal to learn from Palestine, as well as Palestinians. And I think that is a key feature of this Palestinian notion of samud, as well as a core foundation of their resistance, and ultimately is how that they are surviving this now decades-long onslaught against their land relations as well as their livelihood strategies.
Thank you. And moving on to, I mean, you mentioned international solidarity movement. So how do you, as a volunteer, how do you see the role of ISM in occupied territories, especially in the West Bank?
That's an excellent question as well. I don't want to overstate the significance of the work that ISM does. The most important work that's taking place across the occupied West Bank is the work that Palestinians are doing themselves. The significance of what ISM is doing does let Palestinian families, Palestinian activists, as well as Palestinian actors, be they old, be they young, across the board, quite simply know that they're not alone, that they're not being forgotten.
That's a
This
really important point because what's happening, sorry to, interrupt you. Uh, I think like, yes, absolutely. It's a Palestinian-led resistance and steadfastness. But I think it's important to have volunteers from international organizations there so that stories are being told, relationships are being made. That's how I see it, because otherwise, right now, what people feel here is that there is no one, right? The Gaza is being destroyed. The Palestinians are, just standing alone against this power, military power of the state of Israel. So go ahead, please. That's how I see it. Any small contribution by outside groups, not to appropriate the resistance, but to stand in solidarity, I think is really crucial.
That's an excellent point, Dr. Raj, and I don't know if I could articulate it
Uh,
in a better way than you have, but it is letting Palestinians know that they're not, and it is transgressing colonial borders and saying we are going to recognize the dignity of Palestinians. We're going to pay respect to their resistance and show up and take a stand and walk alongside them, quite literally, as they resist racist dehumanization, as well as a fanatical movement that is trying to eliminate them. And to your point, the degree to which amplifying stories on the terms and preferences of Palestinians, as well as the degree to which we are acting hopefully in responsibilities, in responsible ways, when we return to whatever geography we're from to tell stories about what the Palestinians are being subjected to, is something that I think is an essential aspect of international solidarity, as well as raising awareness about what's happening, not only in Gaza but also across the occupied West Bank. And so I've always been a staunch advocate, as Frantz Fanon is, of his quote that the political education of the masses is a historical necessity. I think the more critical consciousness that can be raised about what Palestinians are being subjected to is a necessary and vital element of advancing collective action, not only for Palestinians, but for the rest of the world. And I have a colleague who issued a statement that I won't forget about the Palestinian struggle for liberation. And his quote was that all historical and global fault lines are converging in Palestine. And I think that that's an accurate statement. And the more we can do to take a stand, to show up for Palestine, to assert to the powers that be, to assert to mainstream conventional institutions that are complicit in genocide, that are complicit in ethnic cleansing, as well as the more we can do to respectfully as well as responsibly amplify the perspectives as well as voices, not to mention critical insights and acumen of Palestinians who are struggling from below, the better it is, not only for Palestinian struggle for liberation, but all of us in general. We're all concerned to some degree with advancing sustainable and just futures.
Thank you so much. And now, as we reach the end of our conversation, uh, is there like, I mean, whosoever comes and watches this and listens to it, what is like an urgent message that you would like to share as someone, who's there in solidarity with the Palestinian people? And what is it? some urgent message that you would like to share, or a message from someone who's standing in solidarity with Palestinian people on the ground?
It's a fantastic question. The key takeaway, I think, is the time to act is now. There is no time to waste with respect to offering international solidarity with Palestinians. With respect to the escalating ethnic cleansing that's taking place across the West Bank, not to mention the ongoing attempted annihilation of Palestinians in Gaza. And so there are a variety of different ways in which people can take a stand, in which they can show up for Palestine, as well as amplify the perspective, stories, as well as voices of Palestinians. And I will caution as well as qualify that that should be done on the terms and conditions as well as preferences of Palestinians themselves. But just the key takeaway message is there is no time to waste. Now is the time for action. We need to collectively organize. We need to find creative as well as admittedly militant ways to stand up against the imperialist world system that is laying waste not only to Palestine, but people from below, from all over the world. And in this case, I think it is urgent to figure out as well as a compassionate and principled response to the forms of violence that Palestinians are being subjected to, whether it's the genocide in Gaza or whether it's the ethnic cleansing that's taking place in the West Bank. And it just so happens that the core values, as well as principles of ISM, I think are generative with respect to finding a concrete as well as very material way to offer solidarity to Palestinians in struggle through a Palestinian-led, consensus-based, nonviolent, anti-oppressionist social movement that is organized from the grassroots as well as autonomously. Just to wrap up, there is no time to waste. Now is the time for action. We must get collectively organized and engage in unity and struggle, once again, on the terms and conditions of Palestinians themselves, against racist dehumanization, against a structure of harm that is settler colonialism that's being advanced by the Zionist regime, as well as offer any form of compassion, solidarity, as well as commitment to collective liberation, and in particular, Palestine, that we can through getting collectively organized.
Well, that's a wonderful message, and it resonates with me, and I'm pretty sure it will resonate with a lot of people in this world. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and I do hope that you continue doing your work. And of course, we all hope and pray that the Palestinian people can live with dignity and peace and freedom. So thank you again for joining me today. I'm deeply, deeply grateful.
Well, thank you, Dr. Raja. Palestine will be free, inshallah, and I look forward to the content that you will continue to release that will be put in the service of not only the liberation of Palestine, but also collective liberation for all who struggle. So thank you for your time. Thank you for having me on, as well as you always sign off. Peace and love to all the listeners out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I think what we've heard is eye-opening, and it should move you, me, and everyone else who has some human compassion and feelings towards standing in solidarity with Palestinian people and mobilizing whatever we can rhetorically or materially in this world to convince more and more people to speak and stand for justice and peace. That's all. Thank you so much. Peace and love.